Well, we are live once again, Coffee with Humans, internationally around the world with my new friend Joey. Joey, welcome to Coffee with Humans.
Hey, thanks for having me today.
Well, this is exciting. I think that you're very nearby where I'm at. I'm only judging this from your area code. And to our new viewers and listeners, I don't really know who my guests are until we're just here live. Basically, I met you, but 8 minutes ago,
Yep.
and we went through some tech checks. But your area code suggests that you are near me.
Yeah.
Where are you located?
I'm in Madison, Wisconsin, West Madison.
Madison. All right. See, called it. The magic of area codes in the United States. I'm in Northern Illinois.
Okay.
So Rockford area.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So we're very close by. I go through the Madison area to go rock climbing at Devil's Lake and hiking and stuff. So.
Oh, nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have aspirations to go into nature and do it very little. So
yeah, it's always been that way.
Since we've lived here, yeah, we've been out here in Wisconsin since 2006. I'd say probably when we lived in New York, it was more like the local park. But I was there like every day running, biking. That's been a challenge since I've moved out here.
Yeah, different city layout for sure. I am curious. We do have to get this out of the way. I'm curious, why did you choose to click the button to have coffee with me?
Yeah, well, actually, somebody recommended your podcast to me, so I went and took a look, and I was kind of struck by how real it felt. And I guess for me, I feel like a lot of the things that go on online are kind of staged, or very, business centric, where it's like, trying to sell a product or a business. And I don't know, what I felt was like, if we shared our story together, maybe it would help some people. And
Wow.
that was kind of my main reason for signing up.
Wow. That's pretty profound.
I guess.
It is, right? I mean, if you're suggesting that by sharing your story, maybe it can help some people. It reminds me of, I was working with somebody yesterday, and her apprehension was sharing her story in a big, bold way.
Mm-hmm.
Even, dealing with this idea that it could help somebody, but also dealing with the idea that, well, maybe it's not a good enough story. Maybe it's not maybe it's not going to benefit anybody, and that kind of being caught in that tension.
Yeah.
And then being able to fully walk into it. It's interesting that you resolved in your mind that you're just going to have this talk. Now, this is real. This is great. So I'm glad that the reality of what's happening here is coming across, because nothing has been staged other than the tech here. We don't know each other, but we're going to, and we're going to, and isn't that fascinating that when we get together. And, building off what you said, this idea of this intention, having this intentional spirit to go create something good things can happen.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting. And I guess, it's, for me, it started, I don't remember much from when I was a kid, but I always remember this desire, this need to help others. And that's, what I work on with my family and with my clients. And I think it is vulnerable. I think a lot of people are scared to tell their story, or a lot of people feel like it's just them who are experiencing a certain thing. And what I find is when I bring things up to people, they may have a different story. It may have a different face to it, but their struggle, their pain, their challenges can often be very similar. And then people feel less alone. Someone's got to take the first step and say, hey, this is what's going on. And it's not easy, right? It's not the perfect facade you see on Facebook and LinkedIn.
Yeah, totally. Isn't that so true? And this is so timely too, because I recently had a conversation with somebody, and this individual is dealing with some stuff that happened, in teenage years, and then bringing that forward to, a present reality, 15 years later, and kind of replaying events and wondering can I talk about this? Do people think that I'm crazy? Do
Mm.
people think that, that I'm still okay? What does that say about me that these things happen and all this stuff? And isn't it so true? And I'll speak for myself that speaking one story, it's thinking about doing that I sometimes believe that maybe the next step is that now I am alone. Like I'm not alone right now because you're here. But if I tell you this, then you're not here, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is this weird thing. So we keep sort of distance, I think, from one another, and sometimes necessarily so. Like all of our business is not everybody's business, but sometimes it is, and it's I think it's pretty universally true that people struggle, like you talk about, this idea that you're going to be alone if you share the stuff that you're dealing with.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. And then you brought up something earlier about your story not being good enough, maybe that worry, that fear. And I think from what I've seen from myself and the people I've talked with is that there is this kind of pervasive fear of not being good enough, not being good enough dad or human being or business owner, or, hey, my story, my life story isn't good enough to share. And I mean, speaking frankly, I think most often that's bullshit. Can I say that?
Yeah, totally. It is bullshit.
I think the more we share, the more we connect, the more we have less fracturing, right?
Yeah.
And more understanding.
I think the phrase I said to an individual the other day who was dealing with this imposter syndrome thing, I said, "Who made you?" I said, "Who made you so important and knowledgeable that you can judge what everybody else feels?" Because I said, because it's your story, and you're judging for everyone else, but really that's not. We say that, well, it's not good enough for all of them, but really it's all about what's happening inside. That I think I might not be good enough. It's never about them. We call it imposter syndrome. Well, they're not going to think it's good enough. They're not going to do all these other things. They're not going to accept me and all this other stuff. But it's really some core fear in ourselves that we need to work out. And when we don't, we become enslaved to it, and we get lost. I think sometimes stuck in a loop, and keep rethinking the same thoughts, which then just makes them bigger.
Yeah.
Instead of inviting somebody new into the process to kick ourselves out of that loop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. You've just described something I work on pretty much every day. I listened to this gentleman named Eckhart Tolle. I don't know if have you heard of him?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's a wonderful guy. And one of the things he talks about are these narratives that we create in our minds that have nothing to do with reality, but they feel real to us. And one of the visualizations that I like to do is think of myself like there's this river, right? And it's this raging river. It is not calm. And that's like life. All this stuff going on, pandemic, sick wife, Crohn's disease, running a business, exhaustion, middle age, whatever, right? But we have a choice where we can either feel and be immersed in that river, so it appears to be our total reality.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, when that happens, it feels like I'm drowning in it. And that's kind of like when you're in that mental loop, whether it's a thought or an emotion. But then if we just take a breath and take a step back and observe the river, kind of witness it, we're still going to feel what we're feeling, think what we're thinking, but we can kind of have that higher self, that consciousness or that awareness, and say, okay, this is what I'm feeling, but this is not who I am.
Yeah.
And you can be maybe a little bit more objective about things.
Yeah, because we are able to do that. I think one of the like you're talking about is the idea of stepping back to observe what's going on. And I love your metaphor of the river, because that's what a lot of this stuff is. It's all of these tributaries or whatever that came together, and now it becomes this raging river, and it feels unstoppable. And just to a large degree, life is unstoppable. And then when we're in the middle of it, we tend to lose sight. And and yeah, the whole idea of drowning, I felt what that feels like, and I never knew what that felt like until I was like, early 40s.
Yeah.
Um, and I quite literally, when I would feel those ways, or be resistant to feeling like this like I'm going under type thing, um, I would feel, and I laugh about it, I kind of chuckle about it now because I know what it feels like. I know I'm okay, but I would feel like I'm going to be forever. Like
Mhm.
this is it, and it's just all it was is a wave of emotion
Yeah.
that I didn't know how to deal with,
Mhm.
and spent a considerable amount of time trying to not deal with that.
Yeah.
Uh, which was not to my benefit. I
No.
mean, that's why it's kind of, on the other side of it, it's kind of like, oh, gotcha. That was in that. It's almost like I can experience why that was there, what it taught me, what I allowed
Mhm.
myself to be taught in those moments.
Yeah.
Um, and and now on the outside of it, it's like, okay, like now I know better how to deal with my own self and my
Yeah.
own nonsense.
It's yeah, I agree with you. And it took me too into my 40s. And that's, we have two teenagers, and my wife and I are both kind of on the same path. My wife is a shaman and a massage therapist. And um, we really try to kind of put this in front of our kids so they can absorb what feels good for them, and right for them now, so that when they when they are in their 30s and 40s, they're not just discovering it. Um, you
It's a
mentioned
process of thinking, it seems, right? I mean, it's a process of, I mean, interrupt you.
that's fine.
The You're teaching kids how to think rather than specifically what to think. You're giving them a process to go through,
It's
a way to observe.
Yeah, and I'm from New York, so interrupt me all you want. I don't care. It's all good. It's part thinking. It's what I call. It's funny because we have never talked before, but you keep asking me things, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is what I think about when Jason mentioned this. It's something I call emotion and intellect. And when I look at that, like, I don't look at it so much thinking like the thinking part of our brain that causes the quote unquote trouble, right? These loops or these pervasive thoughts that worry us, right? Oh, what's going to happen if I don't get this client? What's going to happen if my wife doesn't feel better? Because that's kind of worry and thought. I think there's something that there's thoughts that work for you. And I think that's the kind of thought you're talking about, where you're thinking through something and you're looking at it and maybe finding some solutions. And then there's thoughts that kind of just screw you up, right? Perseverating is a good word for it. So, yeah, so we're teaching them to think, but also to kind of step back from these kind of ongoing narratives, these ongoing worries and fears, and make space. I often feel tension. Okay. And again, I'm a New Yorker, so I think that's pretty normal.
It's in your blood.
Yeah, typical neurotic New Yorker. But often I've learned to identify, like, what does that feel like? And it kind of feels like
Mm,
almost like being really crowded in a very small space.
mm,
And when I can start to create this like metaphorical space between myself and what I'm worried about or what I'm thinking, it just feels so much better. I don't know if any of this is making sense.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, but we are teaching the kids to think, but to be able to identify, hey, I'm in this fear loop. I'm in this anxiety loop. Right now it's the last week of school and there's a lot of worry about, projects
Yeah.
and normal stuff. And it's okay to feel that. And it's
Yeah.
also okay to be okay in this situation, because you know what? The finals and all that stuff, they're going to come, they're going to go, and there'll be the next thing and the next thing and so
Mm,
on, right? So it's how do we deal with those things as they manifest so that we are okay, because we're okay. Regardless of whether we think we are or not, we are okay. I've got Crohn's disease. I have fairly constant pain, but I'm okay.
mm.
My wife has fibromyalgia. She's pretty much in constant pain. And that's a harder one to swallow. That's a harder one to be okay in, because there's so much sadness around that.
Yeah.
So how do I deal with that? Because I don't want to just, like you mentioned earlier, kind of just ignore it or try and resist it. But I also need to function.
Right. So it sounds like to me that you connect connect the physicality of yourself to the mental, the spiritual, the emotional parts of yourself. Because when you're talking about like how does this feel, you're using spatial analogies, and it seems to me, and somebody asked me this at one point in time. I don't know, can't remember who it was. The question was, where do you feel that in your body?
Mm.
It was anxiety or something like that. It's like, where do you feel that in your body? How's that expressed? And it was a really grounding process for me to take it out, take these emotions, these feelings out of this I don't know, ethereal headspace, like somewhere out there, wherever that's at, just holding, juggling balls, and really just be like, oh, my body's expressing it in this way, which then gave me, it seems, a bit of control. I saw a person at one point in time talk about how they deal with individuals who have a lot of anxiety or other other health related concerns, and they said, hold a dial out there. I want you to show me where on the dial from 1 to 10 is this today, right? And turn that dial, show me where that's at, right? And then I want you to really focus on whatever that feeling is you have, and I want you to turn that dial down, turn it down. And it was this idea of connecting the physical world to the mental world and the spiritual world, and recognizing it is all linked together, and one flows into the next, which when we deal with health concerns and that type of stuff, it can become debilitating, just the fact that it's there, and it's just information into the space that wasn't there before.
Yeah, I like that analogy about the dial. Out of this headspace, right? It's something that it's like when you put like a piece of cork in water. There's my New Yorker, water, and it just floats to the top, right? And I think sometimes we can get stuck in that headspace, and when we bring it into the body, it's like, oh yeah, it's like I just did that and immediately felt different. Immediately felt connected to different parts of myself. That awareness and that kind of mindfulness. And I don't think
the Western. Is it a Western culture thing? I mean, I'm going to go off on a limb here and say that you have some understanding of this. When I asked you what the title was of this talk, which was based on a question that simply was asked probably forever of you ago, because it takes so long to get in here. But I said, if there were life or a novel, what would one of the chapters be called? And you said the Rise of the Warrior Sage, and that's there's something deep to that. I don't think you're using that lightly, is my guess. I think you have some knowledge and some perspective about the depth of the words warrior, or the depth of the words sage, and the depth of the word rising. Where does all this land for you in this idea of the warrior sage, and how you're going through these processes of life?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it does feel like forever ago that we set this up, but I'm still living that. And for me, I guess not that long ago, I was kind of feeling knocked down. Everything as far as work, Kappa SEO was going fine. My team was doing okay. Even in the pandemic, we had clients. That part was kind of okay, but I was feeling like so beat up, just literally like on the floor, and struggling with this archetype of the warrior. I've always thought about the warrior, or when it's explained to me, it's always this guy who's like ready to fight, ready to kill or be killed, right? That fight or flight syndrome that the limbic brain constantly deals with, which is why we have so much fear to begin with. And I started feeling like how do I deal with all these things in life if I don't want to be that human being that is fighting? And I started to kind of morph, what does that warrior mean to me? And I started thinking about this, what is a spiritual warrior? Because we have so much discord already in the world, in our own country, and sometimes in our own families, right? So that thinking we need another guy to be a warrior in that traditional archetype, we don't need that. And it started to transform for me into someone who can help bring positive outcomes just by his or her presence, just by his or her demeanor and how they approach a situation. Because can't we be a warrior that brings peace, or that brings solutions, or that just holds space for people who are really feeling awful right now? So this warrior became someone who's more like a shaman. And I have a very, I don't have any, in this lifetime at least, any direct blood that is, American Indian, but I have a very strong connection to the American Indian spirituality and mythology. And so that has a lot of meaning for me, and the way they lived. So, this warrior and this sage, hypothetically, is someone who's always in consciousness, or most of the time, and who brings that calm and that sage-like quality to every interaction. But this is my struggle, because I am in a human body, living a human life with those emotions and those feelings that I struggle with just like everybody else. So it's kind of like this constant balance to accept my humanity, because part of me just doesn't want to deal with the human stuff sometimes. Anyway, do you have questions, or I think I kind of explained it.
Yeah. So here's how I don't know, this idea of warrior, because you talked about this idea of warrior being this fierce person who's always like fighter. It's like, it seems like a fight scenario, right? Mm-hmm. It brings to my mind something that Jordan Peterson just talked about, and I don't know if you follow Jordan Peterson at all, but Jordan Peterson has this following on YouTube or whatever, and he talked about how we teach people that they don't have to be warriors. We teach people that they don't have to be fierce, that they don't have to be super strong and like ready to go to battle, because somehow that's not that type of virtue is not upheld or appreciated in our society. And really, he says that does a disservice, because it teaches people that they aren't strong. Instead, we need to be fierce. We need to be strong, and then we need to learn how to use that, coupling it with this idea of sage, right? We need to be able to use that, or learn how to use that, learn how to temper it, learn how to pull it back, because we are not weak as individuals. If we're not able to overcome or fight through some of these things of life, which are real, they're difficult things of life. If we're taught that we don't have that sort of strength, then of course we come to some of these scenarios and say, I don't have the strength to get through it, because we weren't taught that we are strong. We have an incredible amount of authority and responsibility to craft our worlds in a strong sort of way, but coupling it with that idea of sage, yeah, where we are thoughtful, knowing how to wield, the sword, or not, mm-hmm, keep it there. And what was it? Was it ninjas or something like that? I don't know. Can't remember when. The idea that, in the Art of War, Lao Tzu says, something, I'll butcher it, but it's something like, doing nothing is doing something. Mm-hmm. And that sort of wisdom, to know when to just ride the wave, ride the current, don't mm-hmm, fight the current, ride the current, use the current, and sometimes know when to, fight like hell, to move, from where we're at to where we want to be, either emotionally or intellectually.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes me think of acceptance, like, and similar. I think acceptance can be very powerful, and I think you're right. I think we have been taught a very limited amount or limited vision of what a warrior or what strength is, and sometimes strength is sitting in stillness or saying nothing, even if somebody upsets you or you out and out feel like that person is wrong. But okay, maybe saying nothing right now is the best, and that's a strength. But I find. No, go ahead.
I have a quick story on that.
Yeah.
This is a stupid story. I probably shouldn't say it on the air, but whatever.
It's okay.
So I was out to karaoke one night several weeks ago. Actually, probably more than that now. It was probably months ago. And I was kind of saddled up to the bar. I was talking with one of my friends. And I accidentally bumped the guy behind me. And he just started going off, not directly to me, but talking about me to the person he was sitting with because I had bumped his chair. Like, and it kept escalating. And I thought, he wants me to pick a fight. He wants me to snap on him so that he has some excuse to go, like, I like to do what? I don't know. To be seen as cool and like in front of his girlfriend or something. Like, I don't even know what's going on here. And I sat there determined. I was like, I am not going to say a word to him. I'm going to say nothing at all the while playing through my mind, like, I might take him down. Like here's how I'm going to take him down if I need to take him down, which I found, in myself. I was like, I'm pretty proud of myself for doing nothing because I'm never going to, and it's actually at that point in time, I was like, I'm never going, I don't need this kind of nonsense. I'm not going back there anymore.
Yeah.
Because I need to, like, I'm worth more than this. Like my brain, my psyche, it's worth more than having to listen to a guy next to me who just wants to pick a fight. But as that kind of idea of like just know when to do nothing while also knowing that you could do something.
But that brings up a real interesting duality of being a human, right? Because
yes,
just from what I've learned, that's something what that gentleman was doing in that moment. He was stuck kind of in ego. Or in kind of a lot of people call like the lower self, right? Oh, that guy hit me. It was an accident, right? It's not like you're there elbowing him on purpose. I wouldn't think. Were you?
Nope. No, not at all.
Yeah. So it's like, so he got kind of stuck in this loop, right? Which some people call ego, or Eckhart Tolle calls ego. And this is not ego like, oh, I'm so great. This is part of us that is kind of like this bit that kind of feeds off these kind of situations, right? That wants to feel, indignant towards somebody, that wants to feel upset. And that kind of sounds weird, doesn't it, to want to feel upset? But he's kind of stuck in that. And what he's doing to you in that moment is saying, come on, join me in this moment of like, non-awakenedness, in this moment of non-awareness. Come on, let's do it, man. And it's like, and then even in your mind, you're like, no, I'm not going to do this. And part of you is thinking about like, okay, I'll kick him in the knees if I need to, right? Because I'll take him down. And so there's this duality. And then which do you choose? And going back to that river, sometimes we get just sucked into it, and it's like you see nothing else, right?
And there's the duality of trying to go through that, not in our own minds. Right. Which are the big, kind of the big pervasive things of life, like whether it's long-term disease or whether it's relationship stuff or whether it's stresses around work and business. It seems that sometimes I've got caught in a loop thinking that I can't do anything about it, that maybe I'm not smart enough, strong enough, whatever, to go through that. But that's not reality. The reality is you can do something. Maybe sometimes you should do something, and then sometimes recognizing when you can't do anything. It's not your issue. It's like this is just the ride, the wave to ride. But doing that in a vacuum is just for ourselves is not the answer. Nobody needs a sage if they're alone. I don't need to be my own sage. What would be the purpose? I don't need to be my own warrior if there's nobody else around.
Mm.
You know, I don't need to attain, I don't need to self-actualize if it's just me in a corner.
Mm.
That's the, I think that there's something to this idea of, you know, you said, you know, bring it back to, you know, why'd you come on here? You're like, well, you know, it looks real. It looks like real connection. It's not overproduced. It is just a conversation, a meaningful conversation with your story to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's why we determine who we are as a warrior. That's why we determine who we are as a sage, because ultimately we know it's not enough to just figure it out for ourselves. We have got to figure it out and then pass it along.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how we make a actual contribution.
Mm.
Right. You made me think of a story. It's okay if
Yeah.
Okay. So this, you know, when I look back, I kind of realize this warrior sage has kind of been with me for years. So to your point, this is it'll be 4 years in December that my wife got hit with fibromyalgia. And it was on my birthday of all days. So that was kind of a bummer. But she was like paralyzed. She was in the hospital. It was bad. And kind of soon after that, you know, I was never a big drinker. I drink a beer, a glass of wine, but I was kind of a bourbon guy. So I drink like a shot of bourbon, you know, like when I was making dinner or after dinner. Then I started to notice I became like the cook, the guy shopping, kind of doing everything, right? Because my wife. And all of a sudden, like one shot turned to two, turned to three, and I'm cooking dinner one night, and I drank like half a bottle of bourbon. Mm. And this was not in my character, right? Not judging anybody who drinks that much bourbon. Everybody's got their own tolerable and lifestyle and all that. But for me, it was too much, and I wound up being pretty inebriated after. So much that I actually got kind of physically sick. And in that moment, even though I was still drunk, I said to myself, I am done with alcohol. Because I saw the writing on the wall, and I did not want to be the man, the dad, the husband, the spiritual being that coped with my shit by becoming an alcoholic. Mm. And I was extremely lucky to have the willpower to do that. And I'm very grateful. So, and this is, I'm telling you guys this, I don't want anybody to feel bad. I'm telling, because I think there are people out here struggling with the same thing, whether it's smoking, drinking, whatever, right? So what I wanted to do, what did I do to cope? Because when you're in this situation, you need to cope somehow, right? Yeah. And, you know, most of us aren't Buddha, where we can just go sit under a tree and people feed us rice and we kind of just work it out for however long that takes. I think in our day and age, you know, I think most people would be like, who's that crazy guy? And you'd starve to death under the tree. Let alone, let's not even get into like okay, did you abandon your family to go sit under a tree? That's a whole nother conversation. So I'd like to share what I did. I joined I joined the men's group, which was critical. I started seeing a therapist to talk about what I was experiencing. And working through the various emotions of having this huge shift in my marriage. And, you know, now how do I adjust as a business owner, as a dad? And what I quickly learned was self-care was the first and most important point of contact for me. So joined a men's group, saw a therapist, and started collecting. I got to have one nearby. I got one. Started collecting notebooks, these things called field notes, and also pencils, of all things, vintage pencils, modern pencils. Just I've got a whole desk full of this stuff. But you know, it's something that is distraction. It's stuff I use, and I every day sit and I work with these pencils and notebooks, and I've become a total stationery geek. So I guess my point with this is that there, you know, the need to cope is real. The need to be in awareness of how am I coping? Is it healthy? And back to your message about having that strength. I didn't think I did. I just knew that that road was not the road. There's no way I'm going down that road. And I know people who did go down that road, and after months or years or decades were able to turn it around. And some still struggle in it. I didn't think I was going to survive it, to be honest with you. And that's kind of where that whole warrior sage came out of. That's why I felt so beat down by life. But, not to make light of it, but we're all beat down by life in some way, shape, or form. I mean, it's just a reality. Unless you know somebody who's got a perfect life. I haven't met anyone.
The only people who have perfect lives are the ones who are lying.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'd rather talk about it. I've had clients sitting right in this office, sitting across from me in tears because they were just about to start a divorce procedure. Mm-hmm. And was like, you know what? Let's focus on that. Your website can wait, Anyway, thanks for letting me share that with you, because I think that's an important thing to bring to light.
Yeah. Well, it is out of those. I found that it's out of that struggle that we have to decide to do something with it or not. Mm-hmm. And that's where it does seem to me that there's a necessary process of working with other people as we go through our stuff. Mm-hmm. Right. And that denying that is the hidden danger in not sharing our story, because we deny somebody else's moment to hear that there's hope and that it's going to be okay. And that I think, I was talking to a friend. I said, you're in this loop because if you want to get out of the loop, you're not going to get out of the loop by thinking it and you're like rethinking over the same stuff that you thought over the same way. You need a different process, or you need different information into the loop.
Yep. And
it is with that different process or that different information that you will generate a different outcome in the thinking. And we as people tend to be quite resistant to opening up a little bit, to saying, well, let me spill the beans. But it is interesting, the amount of shame, because I think that's where a lot of this stuff comes from. The amount of shame that's involved in life, and the hiding from that shame, which I think is the destroyer. That's what destroys us. It's continuing to look at the outcome, the potential, the hypothetical outcome of sharing the inevitable shame and the inevitable loneliness and loss of everything. Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting, it's almost a gift. It's a gift almost to have this, what's his name? I can't remember his name. He wrote the book, The Gift of Struggle.
I don't know.
And he was on a podcast of mine a long time ago. Can't remember his name offhand. But it is that gift in that moment that allows us to be able to choose a different path. Mm-hmm. If we didn't have that, we'd stay stuck in our own nonsense for indefinitely. But do you feel, so having gone through that, what has changed for you? Like where just generally, what are the top couple of things? What comes to your mind when I say what has changed for you in your life? Maybe it's in yourself or your business or your relationships.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, by the way. I think that struggle was a catalyst. And you have two choices, right? You can say, yeah, but, right, this happened. Yeah, but it stinks. I wish it hadn't happened, blah, 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 right? Resistance. Or we can say, yes, and what can I do about it? When I got laid off from Land's End, over a decade ago with a bunch of other wonderful people, I knew that was a yes and moment, and it was a struggle. I also knew it put me in a position where I would need to make, like you said, different choices. I'm kind of amazed, to be honest with you, because as hard as it's been to see my wife go through this, and for my family to experience it, the boys, and I do not think I would have gone down the spiritual path that I did without that catalyst. I kind of feel like, I believe if I was the same person I was like before all that now, I'd be a train wreck. And I'm not. Things aren't perfect, it's still hard, but that catalyst really put me in a position where I had to say yes, but, or yes, and I'm a yes, and kind of guy. So I knew that was the right solution. What it has taught me and what it's done, it's helped me teach my kids how to respond to adversity, how to live with it and still smile. Like so we walk every day together, the three of us. My wife is not capable of really taking a walk yet. So it's like leaving that and that sadness and then kind of accepting it and moving into the next moment where it's okay. Let's go take a walk, guys. Let's go shoot some hoops or play some volleyball or whatever. We'll go take a run. I would say the biggest thing I took away from all this, though, is self-care. And that it is not being selfish if I need to go meditate or exercise or buy some notebooks. I'm paying the mortgage still. I'm not spending so much on notebooks that we're broke, thank God. But I think, kind of back to that conditioning of shame, that we are conditioned to like be Superman. But by the way, you're weak, but you're Superman and don't ask for help, especially men. And, just suck it up, grit and bear it. And this is such bad advice.
Yeah.
Because if I'm a car, right, and I don't do maintenance, what good am I? My tires are flat and I haven't changed the oil in 20,000 miles and there's no gas, which I often feel like there's no gas. I need to regenerate. What good am I to anybody?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a big pill for me to swallow, to learn to be an acceptance about that self-care. But the cool thing is now I get to share that with my boys. And so they can become men who are more comfortable with that. So I think it's a gift in the long run.
Well, we're a couple generations off of extreme adversity, where to some degree it was just kind of like you just got to go through it. We haven't experienced, here in the United States, we haven't experienced, sending the millions of people off to fight a war where millions of people are dying. We have it pretty good. I mean, all told, we've got our the problems that we've experienced here in the United States are actually pretty limited, and in the grand scheme of things, we have clean water by and large, we have great healthcare by and large, we've got a great education system by and large, it's the land of opportunity by and large. There are so many things that we have dealt with that are just easy, that what seems that when we hit these times of struggle, it does create an existential issue with ourselves, because we have not developed, or we need to develop, let's say we need to develop resilience and skills for resilience. I don't know that I had skills of resilience until I was probably 40 years old. Not to the degree that I needed them to get through like the shit of life. Instead, I kind of I tried to color kind of within the lines, and if I wasn't in the lines, I'd make my own coloring book type thing. But I was playing it kind of safe for quite some time, just really in an effort to not have significant struggle. But who said you weren't supposed to struggle? Life is struggle. It's what you do with it, and I know that's it's kind of like the pat answer, right? But if I look at the stuff that I've dealt with, some of it caused and some of it caused to me, I look at it and go, okay, well, what am I gonna do with it? Like you say, yes, and all right, like I'll walk through that, and if I think that I'm alone, I have to have some sort of trust that I'm not. And then continue to work out, like even Coffee with Humans. It's a space to share, really, to make the world a better place. and why not go about the business of sharing? Because otherwise, I think we limit each other's creative capacity to change. Because we do, all of us find ourselves in these moments where it feels like it's not going to end. This like, I'm not going to make it. I think I think we all need to, I'd hate to say it, but I think we all need to have those moments, the gift of that moment and the gift of somebody else to be there. To be able to, I think, to be able to clear out some of the crap, like the stuff that we realize, oh my God, that didn't matter. It's like we have to go through a war of sorts to focus our priorities sometimes. And when we don't, we get all weird, and make a mess of things.
Yeah, that's well said. Yeah, it's interesting stuff. I feel the same way. It was my 30s where I started to kind of wake up, so to speak. Well, for me, it was when I got Crohn's disease. Excuse me. That was like the first kind of major, hey, dude, we're going to throw this at you. This is a curveball that you can't step back from. It's going to hit you square on. By the way, it's not going to go away until you face what you need to face.
Right.
And I see that within life that, you keep getting reminded of stuff until you take that moment and say, okay, let's look at this. But not let's look at this so I can beat myself up or feel bad about myself or feel like a lame human being. But let me look at this to see what is going on. What am I maybe supposed to do different or not at all, right? Or what shift can I make? You asked a question earlier, like, what did you do like in your business to change things? And I had to kind of sit down and talk with the team and talk about kind of giving off or, the work differently and taking more off my plate and training and trusting, which I was fine with, which is good. It's so interesting because a lot of what we're talking about, I always feel like it comes down to resistance. I feel like if a human being could get rid of resistance in their existence, I feel like no problems. And I'll it's like resistance versus acceptance, right? The two sides of the coin. And resistance is normal. I think there's a problem sometimes with acceptance because people feel like, oh, if I accept this, that means I'm kind of just throwing myself under the bus. I'm just accepting what is. I'm kind of being totally powerless. I've had many people say that to me, including one of my kids. And I said, wait a minute, let's talk about that, because acceptance of what is doesn't mean you're just going to lie there and take it. It means just accepting this is what it is. And I liken it to a flat tire. If you have a flat tire, you can resist it until the moment you die. But man, that tire's still flat. Or you can say, yes, I have a flat tire and I can change it and go on my way. And that's, I don't know about you, but that's something that I still work on. I'm like, am I resisting right now? And when I ask that question, the answer is usually, yeah, I am. But that gives me that room, that space to say, okay, let me stop.
Do you think the resistance is equated to fear or is experienced? Are we resistant in the areas that we're most fearful of? What's been your experience?
Oh, that's an awesome question. I think resistance is absolutely tied to fear, right? Like, especially with a health issue, whether it's your own or someone else's. I think fear and anxiety is pretty pervasive in our era. I think the pandemic has exacerbated that. I think that electronics, it's different than we were kids. We sat down as kids, we played Atari and television, then Nintendo, right? But it was kind of self-contained. Mm-hmm. We sat down at the TV and played Nintendo. Now it's like what we're doing now is electronic, right? We're checking our phones, everything's mobile. and it's kind of, we're swimming in it now. And I think with that kind of comes neuroses, and with the neuroses comes more anxiety, because I don't know about you, but I would go out, 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'd play baseball and basketball and football with my friends. And I'd come home for lunch, go back out. And then, so it's out in the world, in nature, under the sun. And that's I'm kind of digressing from your question, but for me personally, I feel that most of my resistances come from either fear-based, which anxiety is a form of fear in my eyes, or just straight up not wanting something to be the way it is. Like
an alternate reality.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if that connects to fear or anxiety. It's just an out and out rejection of what is. And it's hard. Do you find it hard? I find it hard to, even when I know I'm resisting something, if it's something that's associated with a family member or a team member, because my team is my family too. It's hard to live your life with that cruddy thing happening and just let go of resisting it and be able to smile sometimes. Or
years ago, it was a college time frame. I was driving home back to my dorm, back to my college, actually, from having visited somebody. And my friend was in the car with me, and she was in the passenger seat. And I remember that I was listening to Bach, maybe, I don't know. I had some sort of CD on, and back when we had CD players in cars, and listening to this CD, and then the next thing I know, I feel awoken by the need to turn left, and I quickly turn hard left, and all of a sudden the loudest bang, and then silence, and then another bang as my car came down onto the ground. And what had happened was that with cruise control on, probably going 70 miles an hour, I had come upon a bridge. And you know how the bridges are kind of angled up at the corners like this?
Yeah.
Well, I was going to head straight for the grass and just plow into the hill at 70 miles an hour. And whatever woke me up and caused this hard left, which I do not remember seeing anything. I just remember left. And I hit the embankment, boop, and I jumped. My car jumped off of it and ended up through the bridge, and then smashed down on the ground. It was kind of buckled in half. The trunk was open. The doors wouldn't open. There's this crease down the middle of this Saturn SL2. And my friend, she's like, making crazy noises. And I remember getting out of the car as, people are stopping, it's nighttime. It's late, but people are seeing this thing go on. They're pulling off the road. And and I remember in that moment, I got out of my car, and I was in pain and whatnot. And I drove around, or walked around to the other side, and I opened up the passenger side door. And I remember I was repeating in my head, no, 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 no. It was just like, no, 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 no. Just wishing, hoping that somehow this was not real, and I could take back the last, however long that had been, minute, 30 seconds, 15, whatever it was. It was not long. Just take that back and play it out again, where I didn't fall asleep, where I didn't hit a bridge, where I didn't hurt my friend, and nothing was going to take it back. Nothing. And I remember, ambulance coming, and I'm in the back of the ambulance and just thinking, like, this is the present reality. This is just what's going to happen. Like, back to this idea of river, just, this is the river. And that was that. Like, I just had to walk through it. And I'm pretty sure that I was resistant to that reality. And I'm pretty sure that I didn't, because I know I was, in fact, I can say, yes, I was resistant to the reality by just this replaying of no, but I was also resistant to dealing with it, because I sort of made light of it after the fact. I never dealt with I never dealt with like significant. I took the significant like pain or hurt or something or sadness and that type of stuff and just like whoop, pushed it away someplace. I don't know where it went. Um, because I was just like, well, this is reality. We're just going to deal with it, which is a little bit ignorant or short-sighted or something like that to take such a significant thing and just say, well, that's just life. It is life. It is reality, and it changed things, changed certain directions and paths. But at the same time, it's like, it's a big deal. I almost died, and almost killed my friend. Like, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And I just like, well, dope, gonna deal with it. I don't know where that personality was, but I think that trait was, but I think it was not being able to look at present reality and go, wow, this really sucks. And just let it, deal with the totality of it instead, just like push it away, push it away, push it away, push it away. Back to your very, vulnerable, open story about you were dealing with things in your life in a way that was not going to serve you well. And you saw through wisdom saw what was coming next if you continued down that and said, I'm done. Hard left. We're going a different direction.
Yeah.
And then you reached out. For viewers and listeners here, a part of what my, our opportunity here is when we're coming together, you shared a very profound story. And then practical things that you did to work through those moments, which doesn't make them any less terrible. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I resisted the self-care, especially the men's group, for a bit. And my wife knew. She was just kind of looking. She's like, okay, she knew I needed to like work through my resistance. And then I pushing it. No, I'm good. I can handle this. And then at one point I was like, no, this needs to be looked at. And yeah, I think your reaction was probably pretty normal, to try and suppress it, right? Because we're trying to move on, and be okay. And it's like dealing with those moments and the trauma and the guilt. I think again, it's pretty normal to want to push it down because that's hard to sit with that.
Totally. And I think by pushing it down, and this is, I think, something that's been something I've needed to come to recognize. As a guy, part of the storyline in many guys' heads that I know of is that, well, we got to deal with our stuff and I'll just figure it out. And I'm like the protector and I'm going to carry it all on my shoulders so that all of you can have an easier life. And after I hit that bridge, I went to the hospital, dealt with a cop who, as I recall, said something like, well, I got to give you a ticket for something. And I was like, the hell you do? I just hit a bridge. And so he gave me a ticket for an expired plate. And then my friend had like seatbelt burns and that type of stuff. And she called her dad, who came down and got her and took her the rest of the way. And then I remember, I'm not sure when I called my parents. I might have called my parents the day after or something like that and told them what happened. And I distinctly remember my mom being quite upset and asking me, do you need help? What can I do for you? And I told her, nothing, I got it. Which is crazy when I look back on it. But that's been my personality. It's like, nothing, I got it. When in fact, it's like, I was scared. Like, I didn't know what was going to happen next. Like, I now have a car that's destroyed, sitting on the side of the road. I've just been to the hospital. My friend is now injured. I don't know what's coming next. And I simultaneously did not accept help and care. So as to really just kind of carry on, like, I'll figure it out. and then also denied somebody who wants to demonstrate care the ability to care. Like, one of a mother's greatest gifts is to care for her kids.
Yeah.
Don't deny another person whose greatest gift is to care, to just be there. Don't deny them the ability and desire to do that when you need it. And that is the two-sided, I think, trouble in not accepting help and not asking for help and not saying, hey, here's where I'm at. I had a call with a guy a long time ago, and I was going through some stuff, and he's like, hey, do you need any help? And I said, yes, but I don't know how. And I said, I don't know what that means, but yes. Right. And in that moment, when a person has gone through a situation like you're dealing with Crohn's, you're dealing with fibromyalgia, you got a business in the loop and all this stuff. If I came to you and said, hey, I've just found out I've got Crohn's, I got the business thing going on, or hey, I've just got somebody close to me who's got fibromyalgia and we're just gonna have to deal with this. I think you would be able to help me with some next steps. You'd not only sit there and say, hey, I know what this is like, I know where you're at. I can sit here with you, but hey, here's the next steps. Like, this is when you don't know what to ask for, I can help you with that because I know what you mean.
Yep.
You don't have to express it, right? And that I think is the power in learning from our own experiences and then offering it to somebody else. Because when that person like me says, I need help and I don't even know how, you go, I totally get it.
Yeah.
I understand what that's like. Here's what we're going to do. Right? That I think is powerful. And I think we need to be about doing that for other people. Why would we leave each other stranded on the side of the road? Go, oh, you need help? Great. Well, when you figure out what you need, call me. I'll be back.
Send me a text.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting too, because when I had a question for you, when your mom said, how can I help? And you said, I'm good. Like, I was just curious, did you fully believe that you were good? Had you suppressed everything enough to at that moment? Or were you inside saying, holy crap, what do I tell my mother? I'm a wreck, but Mom, I'm good. Like what exactly transpired?
My guess is it would be both.
Yeah.
I don't have a real clear recollection of it. I was probably 18 or 19 at the time, or 20 maybe. But I know that I was always independent. Like, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to figure it out. And I like independence. I like to be autonomous. But at the same time, like, I didn't want to experience some sort of judgment as well. Like, and I don't think my mom would have expressed that. But I didn't want to see her go, you did what? You crashed your car? You fell asleep? Like, are you, because I would have internalized that probably as, you're probably not like you're not good enough, Jace. I think it probably would have been something like that if I had to, hypothesize it now. But I don't know exactly. I just know that I really did gloss that over, and in retrospect, I've processed through that situation, and now, like, I can see certain personality traits that have been rather pervasive in my life that are don't necessarily lead me down good paths all the time, when they're misused. Yeah. And it's just been part of my journey. It's part of my, my storyline.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. You told the story. Well, I'm just envisioning that. That's kind of scary, very scary. Whew. I feel like I just unloaded this huge thing. That's
I know, right? Exactly. Which is good to let it sit there for a little bit, I think.
Yeah. You made me think of something else too when we were talking about your mom. I used to have a dad blog. It's still out there, but I don't blog. It's called Daddy Brain. And one of the things I was a big proponent of was when something happens like what happened with you. I mean, you were a young man. You weren't a kid, but you weren't your frontal lobe wasn't fully developed yet, right? And
True
so you're
story.
kind of in this in-between place. When something happens, how do we as parents help our kids feel more comfortable? And something I've always done, one of the good things I've done, I've made a lot of mistakes, but it's always like, if something happened, like, hey, Dad, he hit me in the head with a can. It's like, okay, what happened? Just tell me what happened. Not why did you do this? Nothing accusatory, nothing shameful. Just opening up to what happened. Because for me, I know if my kids are out at a party, and whether it's them or not, who's had too much to drink, and they're driving, I would 100% much rather one of my kids call and say, hey, Dad, I'm sorry, but such and such or I had too much to drink. Can you come and get us? Right? I do not want in that moment my kid feeling fear to let Dad know that they could be in trouble if they get in that car. And that's kind of what part of what your story made me think of. And I think it's great that you talked to your mom. I think it's great that she sounded like she responded very much like I would like to have responded in a situation like that. It also sounds like your narration maybe wasn't what she would have given you, but that fear of it, sometimes that's all you need, is to say nothing because of the fear of it, the fear of being alone, being left behind, being not good enough. Anyway, thank you for sharing that, because it kind of came full circle to me as a dad.
So for me as a dad, I've got three kids, and my two older boys are 21 and 20.
Oh wow. Okay.
And they I had a conversation with them when they hit that teenage years where we started like button up our heads. And I know that we're going over our time here, by the way, so if you got to go, head out. Yeah, assuming we got a couple more minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I said to them at one point in time, I said, hey, I recognize that we're starting to butt heads. And I said, and I think that's really just that you're trying to take responsibility for your life, but and build your own boundaries and parameters, and yet you're stuck in mine. Because that's what our culture is. You're supposed to stay here for a little while longer in my house until the magical number of 18, when you could go off on your own. And I said, so I said, there's going to be this transference of power and authority for your life. And I said, and this begins now, basically, because you keep wanting to take it. And I said, so from here on out, I'm under no belief that you are ever where you say you are. I said, if you don't have to make up some story about you were at such and such place when you weren't, and I said, you whatever you're watching, whatever you're listening to, whoever you're hanging around with, if you feel that those choices are leading you to the life and the man that you want to be, do those. If you feel they aren't, you have to take care of that. And I said, and I'm going to have my opinions, and sometimes I'm going to tell you those. And it doesn't mean I'm right, and it doesn't mean that we agree. But I am your dad, and I will always, and I have some responsibility in your life still. I said, so I took it a step further, and I said, so tell me, have you ever been a teenager before? And this is my first kid, and he says, no. And I said, I've never been the parent of a teenager before. And I said, so you know how some days you're just making shit up? Some days I am too. But I'm going to try my best. And I said, and I'm also going to apologize preemptively for all the ways I'm going to screw you up. And I didn't know. And I didn't mean to. And you're going to have to take it up with your therapist another 20 years from now.
Oh, that's good.
And it's set for me, it kind of set the stage of like, we're entering a new paradigm. I'm giving some reins to you. And I felt like it was a necessary, it was a necessary transition just to be fully open. Like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing sometimes, but I recognize there's a change here, and here's where I'd like to see that head for your own good.
Yeah.
And I think that did set the stage in some unique ways. And we had to have some other conversations, after that. But I to me I think it's about keeping dialogue open. How do you keep the dialogue open? Because when the dialogue stops, you have a major problem on your hands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whether that's with
Absolutely.
a kid or whether that's with a spouse or whether that's with a friend, when the dialogue stops, you're in respiratory failure.
Mm-hmm.
When you can keep the dialogue open, now you can still have a chance to make it through.
Yeah. And the key word is dialogue, not talking at each other, but an actual dialogue where there's a hearing.
Everybody exists. Exactly. I mean, everybody exists in their own reality. I exist in my own reality. It's just as real as the other person's reality.
Mm-hmm.
And our beliefs are not necessarily, our beliefs that we hold about ourselves and each other are not even based on facts necessarily.
Yeah.
We believe competing facts all the damn time. Or competing beliefs rather. And so like, I mean, on a very simple, on a very basic scale, the saying of, the early bird gets the worm. And you ask people, do you believe that? And they're like, yeah, good things come to those who wait. Do you believe that? Yeah, great. So is it the early bird getting the worm, or is it the bird that's waiting? Like, good things come to those who wait, or they get it? I don't know. Tell me.
It's both.
And that is the story of life. Exactly. It's both. It's yes and.
Yeah.
So simultaneously we can believe that life is okay, that we are okay, and it's a bit of a shitstorm.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
I feel like I'm drowning, but I'm not.
Exactly. Exactly.
I'm afraid, but I'm actually safe.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, those two things go hand in hand. I'm afraid, but I'm safe.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, it's just information to inform ourselves. And sometimes we don't see clearly.
Yeah.
And that's why we need somebody else to say, hey, here's my story. And we're like, oh my gosh, I dealt with that too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great way to
tell me
say
it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sometimes you need to hear that for real, like someone actually saying it, not just saying it.
Right.
And then
experience
you have to watch
smarts versus book smarts.
Right. But you have to be careful, because if the person trusted, right, they're telling you the truth. Yeah, everything's okay. And you're like, are they saying that because it is okay? This is further down the rabbit hole, right? Or are they saying that just so I think they'll think it's okay? But that's a really good point you brought up, is that layering. And I do have a couple more minutes, so don't worry. It's that layering, that two conflicting thoughts, emotions, or a combination thereof can exist at the same time. I'm okay and I'm falling apart. That can exist at the same time. And that took me a long time to come to grips with. But once I did, I was like, oh, that's okay. That's kind of cool. It's almost like you're a little boat, like in this little, like, kind of throughway of a lake. And like, to the left are all these rocks, and to the right is like nirvana. And it's like, okay, let me just do my best. I can see both. I can experience both. They're just like within an arm's reach. But the question is, which one do I want to steer my boat to?
Yeah, it's like whitewater rafting. I mean, I love what you're talking about. Which way do you want to steer your boat to?
Yeah.
Life is a lot like whitewater. And it's just, what degree of whitewater are we in? Are we in the slow, because like life widened out a bit and it didn't all concentrate all the crazy into one spot, and then all of a sudden it did, and we're like thrown about. And it's the skilled whitewater rafter who knows how to use the boat, use the momentum, and move into the stuff, because the stuff's going to happen anyhow. The rocks are in place anyhow. Stuff moves around, the water moves around the rocks. I'm going to move with it, but I can make that a fun day. I can have an okay day. It might even be thrilling sometimes to learn how to use the momentum of life and work with it, rather than hoping that I was in a different river. I'm not in a different river. And no amount of hoping that I'm in a different river is going to change it.
Right. But
I do know that river is going to open up at some point in time. It's going to slow down, and I might actually find value or enjoy the ride if I learn to use it. And whoever's coming down a similar river needs to know, like, who's the guide who can help me down this really crazy part of the river, because I feel like things are getting fast. I feel like I'm getting tossed side to side, and I don't want to fall out of the boat if I don't have to.
Yeah.
So who's the guide? And I think that's who we are to each other. Be willing to be a guide for somebody else's, whitewater rafting trip of life.
Yeah.
Well, we're winding. We got to wind this down at some point in time because our viewers and listeners are used to a shorter show. But this is such a fantastic. I think such a fantastic conversation of openness and really talking about things that matter. And I appreciate you. I honor the space that you're in, where you would come to Coffee with Humans and talk about real things that are going on in your life and your world and your relationships. Because I do believe, I don't just think it, I do believe and walk forward with some responsibility and authority that as we get together, we can make the world a better place, for ourselves first, and then whoever we are given to influence. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I appreciate you. I put your link here on the page if people want to follow up with you and talk with you more personally or professionally. But to all of our viewers and listeners, Coffee with Humans is live, candid, raw, unscripted conversations between strangers who become friends. I met Joey now an hour and a half ago, hour and 25 minutes ago. And we have plumbed the depths of our rivers and scraped some stuff to the surface and then looked at that pretty plainly. So thank you so much. Catch us next time. And subscribe, share on YouTube. Joey, any last words that you want to? I know I'm putting you on the spot here. Any last words that you want to put out there when you're thinking about the rise of the warrior sage that you would want to tell our listeners?
Yeah. Be kind to yourself. Start there, and then work on that kindness to others as well.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate you. We'll talk soon.
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
One of the things I love about Coffee with Humans are the raw conversations I get to have, meeting new people just like you. If you or someone you know should be on Coffee with Humans, go to coffeewithhumans.com. Remember, the only rule is no sales calls.
This has been Coffee with Humans. Subscribe to get updates or click to have coffee with me. coffeewithhumans.com.